This is the download from Sounds Profitable, your daily source for the essential news in the business of podcasting. I'm Gavin Gaddis. Here's what you need to know for today, Wednesday, July 23rd, 2026. First up, the Podcast Atlas, Part 4, The Denominator. Social platforms function as the base from which podcast advertising grows. According to the Podcast Atlas, YouTube reaches 82% of podcast listeners in a month, and Facebook reaches 80% against 36% for all of audio podcasts, which is why Tom Webster frames social as the foundation of distribution rather than a secondary channel. He separates the roles by strength, with audio building trust and belief, while social delivers frequency and retargeting, and notes that ad experience varies widely by platform. YouTube drawing the weakest ad sentiment, and TikTok the highest immediate purchase rate. Here's a quote from the article, quote, "Rates are numerator arguments, and podcasting wins nearly all of them. Social platforms win almost none, and it doesn't matter, because social isn't competing on the numerator. Social is the denominator," end quote. Next up, why the argument for not investing in UK podcast advertising just ran out of road, by Ben Robbins from Sound Insights. Research from Sound Insights and Sounds Profitable finds UK podcast advertising priced far below the audience it reaches, at just 18 pence per listener hour versus 94 in the US, and a 5.2 times gap despite comparable reach and attention. Podcasts reach 43% of UK adults in the past month, and 79% of daily UK podcast users recalled hearing a podcast ad in the past week. Among 18 to 34-year-olds, podcast ad recall hit 86%, higher than the 83% who recalled broadcast TV advertising. Here's a quote from Ben Robbins, quote, "The audience agencies are spending enormous budgets to reach on television is recalling podcast advertising at a higher rate than they are recalling television advertising," end quote. Next up, Q2, 29% organic growth and continued strengthening of offering. Acast has published their Q2 2026 report showing a net sales of SEC 779.6 million krona, up 28% year over year and 29% on an organic basis. North America has grown 34% for Acast, and their European market 25% year over year. Adjusted EBITDA margin expanded from 7% to from 3% a year earlier, and average revenue per listener or view rose 26% to 0.69 krona, signaling improved pricing power alongside top-line growth. CEO Greg Glenday notes this growth is translating into profitability, indicating the company's strategy of scaling revenues ahead of costs is working as intended. Next up, Comscore wants to make buying podcast ads feel more like buying CTV or display. Comscore has expanded its Proximic contextual targeting to 5 major audio platforms: Spotify, SiriusXM Media, Triton Digital, Acast, and Libsyn. This expansion enables episode-level contextual targeting of podcast inventory. By automating transcription and packaging it into pre-bid audience segments, advertisers can buy podcast ads through the same programmatic tools they use for CTV and display, addressing a long-standing friction point for buyers unfamiliar with audio workflows. Here's a quote from Jessica Traynor, head of partnerships at Proximic by Comscore. Quote, "It's putting audio a little bit more at parity with some of the other channels that buyers are used to targeting on," end quote. For our final top story, is AI taking over audio, radio, podcasting, or audiobooks? Edison Research at SSRS has published the result of a survey of 1,000 U.S. fiction audiobook listeners. Each respondent were randomly assigned clips of either a human narrator or an AI-generated voice from spoken. 65% of respondents said they would be likely to listen to an AI-narrated audiobook. 61% of those given AI clips couldn't tell the spoken model wasn't a human. Over in the world of podcasting, trust remains a significant selling point of the industry. As such, generated voices and automated scripts open the door to eroding that trust automatically. Recent Semaphore reporting shows automated personalized podcasts from The Washington Post are having teething troubles, including outright inventing quotes and opinions in articles. Tom Webster notes an increased reluctance to embrace AI voice podcast from college-educated respondents to the Podcast Landscape 2025. That reluctance may be less related to ignorance and more an indicator that the group has a, quote, informed wariness about the existential threat this technology has and will continue to have for an entire class of workers. To succeed with this kind of content will not only require excellent execution, but also a means to address this wariness. AI may be coming to podcasting, but no one can be made to like it, end quote. As for the rest of the news, the Roost Podcast Network has rebranded to Podium. Africa Podcast Network becomes the first of Africa network to launch affinity audiences with number 8, letting advertisers target listeners by interest and demographics rather than individual show placements. Podscribe integrates LiveRamp's device graph to add deterministic household-level matching, plus first- and third-party audience targeting to its podcast attribution. Spots Now has launched premium host-read bundles built around audience types, letting advertisers test new segments in minutes across more than 600 shows. On the podcast advertising playbook, Next Audio's Adele Sadi argues audio listen-through outperforms video click and view-through for advertisers in emerging markets. The Podglomerate offers a guide to rebranding a podcast without losing listeners, covering metadata, cover art, and cross-platform propagation. And podcast host OSHA has recertified for the IAB Podcast Management Guidelines version 2.2. That'll do it for today's issue of The Download. You can find links to everything I just talked about by clicking the one link in your show notes that goes to today's episode post on our website, where you can also subscribe to the newsletter version if you would like the next issue of The Download sent straight to your email inbox. Today's issue was written and produced by myself, Brian Barletta, Tom Webster, and Molly DeMillier. For Sounds Profitable, I'm Gavin Gaddis, and I'll see you tomorrow morning for the Download Recap.